Great to be with you, Joe.
It's a pleasure to have you on. We had you on a couple of weeks ago. We explained what the land commissioner does, and we explained the differences in energy in Texas and across America between the Trump administration and now the Biden administration, and those differences are stark. And then I got a birdie came on my shoulder and said, "Hey, guess what? You might want to have him back on. Looks like he's running for a pretty important office." So being the land commissioner is a huge deal, and I think it was much more intricate and involved than people thought. And now you're running to be the attorney general in the great state of Texas. Talk to me about why that job jumped out at you and why this is the right time.
Well, our state is under assault. This president, along with his vice president, have attacked our economy and our way of life. And little known fact is I am an attorney. I clerked with a federal judge up in Dallas after law school, who was twice filibustered by Joe Biden when he was chairman of the Judiciary
Wow.
Committee. So that shows you the company that I keep here in Texas. And was a corporate and securities attorney in a large law firm, and then became a general counsel in an investment fund before becoming land commissioner. And as land commissioner, as we talked about last time, I manage 13 million acres, and I'm constantly in the courthouse fighting off radical plaintiffs' attorneys that seek to list endangered species, for example, to shut down oil production in the Permian Basin. And then I was successful against the Obama administration when the federal government tried to take federal lands, or I'm sorry, public and private lands based upon federal claims in North Texas, and I was successful in the courthouse on that claim. So, I just think Texas needs an attorney general, a top law enforcement official that's above reproach, that's going to push back on the federal overreach.
It is George P. Bush. He's the land commissioner, but also a candidate for Texas attorney general. George, I'm going to be straight with you. People don't believe politicians anymore. And here's what I mean. Because of the election result in 2020, I'm not saying that it was wrong. I'm not saying that Trump won. What I'm saying is people don't trust the result. And if they don't trust the result, many people who listen to and watch my show have said this: Pags, I'm not going to go and vote next time. I don't believe my vote will count. What can you say as somebody obviously from a political family that has had to deal with integrity of the vote of elections? What can you say to people who literally, George, are going to sit in their hands the next election and not take part because they fear they'll be disenfranchised?
Well, that's the opposite of what we need to be doing as conservatives to keep our country free. The stakes could not be higher in 2022. And it's incumbent that we have the right team on the field. Here in Texas, for example, the Democrats walked out on what I would believe to be very common sense reform to make voting integrity the most important aspect of our constitutional duties as citizens, and that's the vote. We got rid of ballot harvesting. The proposal was to use voter ID to get rid of the drive-through voting, unsolicited absentee ballots, so-called ballot harvesting, and getting rid of dead people off of voter rolls. I mean, this is something we see in large part in blue states, but is even happening in red states. Well, we didn't get this bill across the finish line, but because the Democrats quit their job instead of doing what they're supposed to do, which is take it on the chin. But the governor is going to call back a special session, prioritize this, and Texans will have a free, fair, transparent election. And you're absolutely right. People need to have absolutely no doubt about the validity of an election. It's important for state legislatures to follow on from last November.
What we know, and it's Land Commissioner, great state of Texas, George P. Bush, running for Attorney General. We know that many of the states, there were 5 states out of the 6 that were heavily contentious, that are Republican legislatures that just rolled over and didn't do anything to stop governors or secretaries of state from just willy-nilly changing rules, or even county commissioners and mayors were changing rules for the elections. The Constitution provides that election rules are made up by the state legislatures. What is the role of the Attorney General, in your opinion, when it comes to, let's say our state legislature does do a good job, and they would not have allowed for just this massive change, although Houston still tried to pull some stuff. What is the role of the Attorney General in suing to stop local municipalities, local counties, local townships, whatever it happens to be, when they try to say, hey, wink and a nod, we'll send you an unsolicited ballot, or a wink and a nod, you don't have to show me an ID. Is there a role in that office or not?
Absolutely. And it's arguably one of the most important aspects of what we do, and that's ensuring voter integrity in Texas. Regretfully, there's only 4 full-time prosecutors in a state of 29 million. And if I were Attorney General, I would add a 0. I would make it 40.
Right.
And then hire investigators, former law enforcement officials, police officers, and people that are interested in free and fair and clear elections to join the staff to help find evidence. Texas sadly has a long history dating back to Lyndon B. Johnson in terms of ballot stuffing in South Texas. We've seen incidents of fraud and mismanagement. I feel like we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg of the cases that have been brought. But this is an area of original jurisdiction for the Attorney General, meaning that the AG's office can bring these cases without the assistance of a local DA. They can come from high and above and bring them on behalf of the people.
It's George P. Bush, Land Commissioner of the great state of Texas, running for Attorney General. This president has said that blacks and Hispanics don't know how to get on the internet and learn where to go and vote. This president has said if you aren't sure whether you should vote for Trump or me, you ain't black. This president has said things that are ridiculous, like voter ID somehow is denigrative of blacks or Hispanics or old people and young people because they can't figure out how to get a government-issued ID. I've known blacks, Hispanics, and everybody in between my entire life. I've never met one person who hasn't known how to go and get a driver's license or an ID. But the push by the radical left, George, and you know this, is that we need to take care of you because the evil right, even George P. Bush, who happens to be Hispanic, even he thinks you're stupid. So how do you combat that narrative that people are buying?
Well, it's absolutely insulting. I think it's pejorative to minority communities to say exactly that we can't go out and get a voter ID. I mean, you need a voter ID to get pharmaceuticals, to get on a plane,
right,
to essentially transact your life. And so that's why, you see down in McAllen, for example, where the new Republican mayor there is the first time a Republican has won in the Rio Grande Valley, in particular in McAllen, in close to 50 years, because of this message, because of the broken border system that we have, but namely because the progressive left, mostly academics, insulting Hispanics and blacks and saying that you can't go out and be a part of the constitutional system just like everything else. And what they do is they play the race card and claim that you're part of the Jim Crow South or that you are a racist, even if you are a minority, let alone if you're Anglo. And it's just disgusting politics, and it's not constructive for making our elections more free and having integrity. Most constituents I talk to are excited about the Texas way, the fact that we had very little disruption. We certainly saw attempts for fraud, but the fact is Texans respect the rule of law, and we're going to keep it that way.
It is George P. Bush, running for Attorney General of the great state of Texas. Let me ask you specifically why now is the time. Ken Paxton has sued the federal government when it was Obama, has sued the federal government now, I guess, now that it's Biden, to try to make sure that Texas gets a fair shake. He's done a good job, according to a lot of people. Why is it now the time to take him on? Because he hasn't said he's not running for re-election, as far as I know. Why is now the time for you?
Well, the Attorney General needs to be above reproach. Yes, he is under indictment for securities fraud and under FBI investigation for allegations involving bribery and corruption. And I'm not going to get into that on the show. I will allow the legal authorities to pursue that. But Texas needs somebody that's focused on the job and winning in the courthouse. I have a proven record of doing so, whether it was against the Obama administration. Right now, I'm working on a case on our southern border that I would love to announce on your show in a few weeks.
Okay,
we're very close to filing. And, you need somebody that's going to fight and secure the border. So early on last week, right after my announcement, my first endorsement that I picked up was with the National Border Patrol Council, the largest union that represents 18,000 men and women that wear the green on the front lines every single day, that keep the watch to protect our communities in our state. So I'm very proud of that endorsement. And I'm going to talk about different ideas that can improve this agency because Texans deserve better.
It is George P. Bush. He's taking on Ken Paxton. He's running for Texas Attorney General. You bring up the border. I think the most important thing, if you asked any American anywhere in their lives, is their personal economy. How much is gasoline? How much is a gallon of milk? We know that in Texas, it's lower than it is most everywhere else. In California, it's $6 a gallon for gas in some places and $6 or $7 a gallon for milk. That's nuts to me. But a lot of people are moving from there, George, and they're coming here. A lot of people are coming here and pushing our housing market way up. And making the cost of living different. What would you say to people who are coming here from across the land? And I want to get to the border in a second as well. I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's the second most important thing to most people, illegal immigration and what's happening at the border, because the crisis is real. But what would you say to people who are coming here from other states to escape horrible regulation, overtaxation, ridiculous economies, and then coming here and basically bringing their same politics with them?
Well, Texas, the reason why most people are moving to Texas is because of conservative ideas, because we have a limited budget. We believe in limited government. We believe in conservative values and in trusting the individual to make their own decisions, not big, bad government. You're right. It is problematic that so many Californians, for example, are moving here. About 1,000 are moving to Texas every single day on a net basis, and it's estimated that half of them are from California.
1,000 a day. Wow.
1,000 a day. And about 150 to Austin every single day. So it's up to people like me and the state party and our statewide elected leaders to register, identify a lot of these folks that actually are Republicans that are upset with the liberal progressive policies on the West Coast. But a lot of these folks that come here are saying, look, I'm seeing the same things in the city halls of Austin, for example, with your camping measures for homelessness, with your defunding police measures,
Right.
and liberal progressive ideas that percolate its way even to our state capitol. So again, I'm going to reiterate that I think it's a sign of success that we have so many people moving here, but we got to remind them every single day and encourage them to register to vote and get involved in the political process here in Texas.
And legislatively, at least, and tax-wise and economy-wise, don't make Texas California. That's stupid. You're leaving there for a reason. It's George P. Bush, the land commissioner, great state of Texas. It's George P. for Texas. It's not George P. Bush, right, for Texas. It's just George P. for Texas, is it not?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Thankfully, there aren't that many George P's out there.
GeorgePforTexas.com. Go there, and we certainly want people to go and check out your candidacy. Two last questions. Number one, the border, as you mentioned, is a major problem. Getting the endorsement from the Border Patrol is a huge deal, George. You know that, because these guys and gals feel as though this administration has now turned their backs on them. The Trump administration was heavily involved. Pence, Trump, everybody was there all the time, and they made sure that they worked in coincidence with Greg Abbott, with Dan Patrick, with I guess Ken Paxton as well, to make sure that we were doing the right thing on the border. This administration is pretending there isn't a crisis. It's become a sieve. We see 100,000 more per month, if not more than that, coming across the border. What role does the Attorney General play in suing the federal government when they don't do their job when it comes to immigration and naturalization to protect the people of Texas? Because Abbott's doing a good job, and he said we're going to start charging people who are here illegally with trespassing. That makes sense to me. I think that's kind of brilliant. But if you have no support from the federal government, what can you do to make them enforce the law?
Well, you push back on executive orders from this president. So that is in connection with the Remain in Mexico policy. Anytime I visit with Border Patrol, they tell me the number one thing that we can do at the federal level is to restore the Remain in Mexico policy. And this was a Trump policy that required you, if you wanted to apply for asylum to the United States, that you do so in Mexico or your country of origin. That just relieves so much of the strain. In terms of the unaccompanied child policy of the Biden administration, basically you are told by the coyotes for anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 to come to the border, raise your hand, and say, I have a sponsor in the United States and I'm here to be a resident, and you're let in. The line has gotten so long that Border Patrol officials are forced to not even give court appearances in some instances. So it is a lawless situation with, like you said, over 170,000 apprehensions last month alone. In the courthouse, there are several laws, and one of the lawsuits that I will be bringing in the next few weeks will actually hold the federal government accountable for building the wall. Trump was successful in obtaining an appropriation for 700 miles of wall, 150 were constructed. So clearly, the federal government needs to follow through on duly appropriated dollars. And there are laws that allow states to compel the federal government to do their job. So I want credit because I'm laying out some of my strategies for what we're going to do at the land office. But there's a lot of things that the AG should be doing to hold the federal government accountable. The governor is doing the right thing on the migrant shelter policy. But we also need to close immigration loopholes because the coyotes train the illegal exactly what to do, what to say when you come to the border to get through without a court appearance.
You mentioned former President Trump a few times. Last question. He's still the de facto leader of the Republican Party. I don't care who argues against that. He just is. And we see that when we see people show up to rallies. We see that when we know that 75 million people voted for him. Do you have a relationship there? Have you spoken with him? Do you want his endorsement?
Absolutely. I would love his endorsement. We've talked twice since I've announced. We talked last Saturday. We had a great call. His focus really is on 2022. He joked that Bernie Sanders is the happiest person in Washington, D.C. right now because his dreams are actually coming true. I mean, who would have thought this would occur? And so, I told him, look, Mr. President, I'm going to be an America First Attorney General. I'm going to support your legacy. I know how to win votes, reach out to Hispanics in a conservative message. And I'd love to be a partner. I told him also when Bush's and Trump's come together, just like we did in 2016, when I led his effort on behalf of the state party, good things happened. It was a high watermark for the party here in the state. So I want to continue that in 22.
I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by that answer, but I'm glad that you guys are working together because, again, that's not going to change. We see his popularity not going down, it's going up, and I think it's very smart to have that conversation. George, can we do this again? I appreciate you coming on to talk about the announcement, and I want people to go to GeorgePforTexas.com. That's the website, and it's F-O-R. It's not the number 4. GeorgePforTexas.com. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Take care. Thank you again.
All right, brother. We're back after this.